So homework 34 starts off where we are again solving a proportion, and on a proportion you solve by cross multiplying. Now I personally, when I cross multiply, like to start with the one with the plain y or plain x, because usually when we solve we like our variable on the left. So when I cross multiply on this one, I would take the y times the negative 12, which is negative 12y, and then I have to take the negative 6 times the y plus 2. When I do the negative 6 times the y plus 2, I end up having to use my distributive property and take the negative 6 times both the y and the 2. So I'm going to have negative 12y equals negative 6y minus 12. And then I just go about solving that like I solve pretty much anything else. I want my y's together on one side, so I'm going to add my 6y to move it over. Negative 12 plus 6 would give me negative 6y equals negative 12. And then I end up dividing by my coefficient of negative 6. Negative 12 divided by negative 6 gives me a positive 2 answer. So number 2, if we cross multiply, again starting here with the z times the negative 30, we would have negative 30z. On the other pair, I'm going to end up taking the negative 18 times the z minus 4. So if I use my distributive property on that one, I'm going to have negative 30z, and what would I have over there on the right side?
Negative 18z minus 72.
What's my sign?
Plus.
Plus, because I have a negative times a negative, right?
Oh.
So positive, and you said that was 72?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so solving that for z, we want to move our z's over to the left side, so we're going to add our 18z, and we would get negative 12z equals 72, and then we're going to divide by negative 12, so z is going to equal
1. Oh,
negative 6. Now in the third one, that one's just a little bit different because now we have binomials on both of my denominators. So again, we're just going to cross multiply. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to say, oh, I've got negative 10 times my w minus 5. My other pair, I'm going to have negative 4 times my w minus 2. And so I'm going to have the distributive property that I have to do on both sides. So if I multiply that out, I would get negative 10w plus 50 equals negative 4w plus 8. So solving that for w, we would want to
minus the 50 and plus the 4.
Minus our 50 and add our 4w, so we can move our variables to the left and our numbers to the right. Combining our like terms then, we would have
Negative 6w.
negative 6w equals
Negative 42.
negative 42. And then when we divide, we get an answer of 7. Negative 42 divided by negative 6 is a positive 7. So just cross multiplying anytime you have a proportion to solve it. So number 4, 5, and 6 could be thought of the same way as a proportion, or you could just look at it and say, oh, I've got a fraction and I have to get rid of my fraction. If I want to get rid of my fraction, I'm going to multiply by that w plus 5 that's in the denominator. So I'm going to say, oh, if I multiply by W plus 5 and multiply by W plus 5, then I can cancel out that fraction. And I would have 1 equals, and use my distributive property, negative 5W minus 25 then. If I want to solve that for W, I'm going to move my 25 over, so I'm going to add my 25. 26 is going to equal my negative 5W. And this time when I divide, it doesn't go in there very nicely. I'm just going to leave the fraction as simplified as much as I can, which isn't much other than putting the negative out in front. So negative 26/5 would be my answer for W. So on number 5, if I'm going to solve that, I'm going to do what first?
Times v minus 1.
Multiply by my v minus 1 so I can cancel out my fraction. I would have 5 equals, and on the other side, that's a negative 3v plus 3, right? Negative 3v plus 3. And then I'm going to minus my 3. So 2 is going to equal negative 3v. And last step, divide by negative 3. So negative 2/3. Negative 2/3 equals v. Didn't leave enough space for my equal sign. So negative 2/3 is equal to v. So number 6, same kind of thing. We want to solve that for u. The first thing we're going to do is multiply by the u plus 4. So the u plus 4's cancel out. Be careful on that one because there's that minus in front of the fraction. We're going to leave that with the 1. So minus 1 equals negative 5u minus 20 then. And in order to solve that, we would add the 20, so 19 equals negative 5u, and then divide by our negative 5. So negative 19/5 would be our answer for u. Seven, 8, and 9 are solving word problems that you can set up as a proportion. Word problems that you can set up as proportions are known as direct variation problems. If one thing goes up, the other thing should also go up. The faster I run or the more minutes I run, the more miles I'm going to get. So they start off with what they call as a rate. Bob runs 3 miles in 25 minutes. So 3 miles in 25 minutes. At the same rate, how many miles would he run in 60 minutes? When I set it up, I want to make sure that since my miles are on top here, my miles are on top here. How many miles would he run in 60 minutes? Now I just put the labels there so you could see that I have the like things on the top. It'd be the same thing as 3 over 25 equals x over 60 without all the writing in there. So again, I'm just going to cross multiply to solve it. 25 times x would be 25x. 3 times 60 would be 180. And then in order to solve that for x, we're just going to go ahead and divide by 25. So 180 divided by 25 would give me 7.2. And these ones you are going to just use the decimals in. so 7.2 miles. If I can go 3 miles in 25 minutes, then I can go 7.2 miles in 60 minutes. So Raina drove 300 miles using 14 gallons of gas. 300 miles using 14 gallons of gas. At this rate, how many gallons of gas would she need to drive 375 miles? How should I write my other rate?
370 over X.
375 over X, right? 375 miles and how many gallons? So cross multiplying here, I like to do the pair with the X, so 300X would equal, and what's 14 times 375 then? 5,250?
Yes.
And then again, in order to solve that for X, all we're going to do is divide. 17.5. So if we go 300 miles using 14 gallons of gas, we can go 375 miles if we use 17.5 gallons of gas. Lamar, that's supposed to say runs, 7 miles in 50 minutes. At the same rate, how many miles would he run in 15 minutes? So how could I set up my proportion?
7 over 50 equals X over 15.
Exactly. 7 miles over 50 minutes. How many miles over 15 minutes? So if we cross multiply, we would get
50X.
equals 105. And when we divide, 2.1 you said?
Yes.
So 2.1 miles. If I go 7 miles in 50 minutes, I'm only going to make it 2.1 miles in 15 minutes. Is that typo while I'm thinking about it? All right. 10, 11, 12, still word problems on proportions. These ones are a little bit trickier because sometimes they will have a total in there instead of just using the same rate that they always give you. It says the ratio of men to women at a certain company is 3 to 2. How many male employees does the company have if there are 95 employees? So what they're comparing is the males to the total. So when I look at my given rate, I want to look at that and say, okay, if my ratio is 3 to 2, there are 3 males for a total of 5 employees, right? 3 men to 2 women, so 3 men out of every 5 employees. So if I have 3 out of 5 for my given rate, how many men if there are 95 employees? X over 95. So 3 over 5 would equal X over 95 for the proportion I would want to solve. So 5X would equal 3 times 95 would be 285. 285, and then I divide by 5. 57? So 57 males. So we'd have 57 men out of the 95 total employees. Number 11, a certain drug is made out of 2 compounds only, compound A and compound B. To make this drug, 5 parts of compound A are used for every 3 parts of compound B. If the chemist has 192 milliliters of compound B, how many milliliters of the drug can be made? So again, we're looking at comparing B to the total amount of the drug that can be made. So if I have my given rate of 5 parts of A for every 3 parts of B, what would be the rate that we'd want to use to solve this problem? We want B to the total. So instead of 5 over 8, we want, how many of B do we have? 3 over 8. So we have 3 parts of B for every 8 total parts. And so we have 192 of B, and we want to know the total number of milliliters of the drug. And so 3x would equal 8 times 192, which would give me
1536.
1536, and if we divide that by 3,
And 12.
512. So if we have 192 of B, then we have 512 total milliliters of our drug. And number 12, the ratio of yes votes to no votes in an election was 5 to 4. How many no votes were cast if there were a total of 7,398 votes cast? So again, we're looking for no to the total. Using the given ratio, what would I have for my first rate? 4 over 9. 4 no votes for every 9 votes cast. We want to know how many no's if there were 7,398 votes cast. So cross multiplying, we would have 9x equals 29,592.
Yeah.
All right, and then we go ahead and divide. 3,288.
Yeah.
So we have 3,288 no votes if there were 7,398 votes cast. So when you get on the assessment, of course, they're not going to tell you which type you have, so you kind of have to watch for when they have that total in there, or ask something like that, that there's a little bit different way we got to go about solving that. And the last 3, I think, on this page, yep, are on similar polygons. If my polygons are similar, again, I can solve this by setting up a proportion, because if I double one side on the shape, then I got to double one side on the other shape and all of that good stuff. So what they're going to have you do is set up a proportion. Starting here, we're looking for x. Well, the x corresponds to the 7 on the other shape, so we would say x over 7. On the other rate, you can use any of the sides on the same shape of the x. It doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to just pick the 3.6 because it's easy to draw on. The 3.6 corresponds to the 4. And so if x corresponds to 7 and 3.6 corresponds to 4, again, we have our proportion and we can just cross multiply to solve. So 4x would equal 7 times 3.6, which would be 25.2. And we're going to divide by 4. 6.3. So number 14 there, my pentagons JKLMN and PQRST are similar. Find the length of x of QR. So if I'm finding the length of x, I would have x corresponds to 3. And then I'm going to pick any of those sides that I want on that same shape as the x. Which one should we use?
4 and 4.8.
Okay, we've got to do the 4.8 first because that's on the x, so 4.8 corresponds to the 4. And so I would say 4x equals 14.4. 14.4, and divide that by 4, 3.6. And the last one, again, we have similar polygons there that happen to be quadrilaterals. We want to find the length of x again. So we would start out and say
X over 5.
x over 5 is equal to
3.6 over 4.
3.6 over 4 would be a good choice. So cross multiplying, we would get 4x equals 18. And when we divide by 4 then,
4.5.
4.5. And you can see that from here to here, they each just get a little bit smaller. The 5 was the biggest side, the 4.5 is the